"Ma'am, you're not cleared. Step away from the aircraft," she did calmly. No badge, no uniform, just boots and a silent stare. They rolled their eyes. Then the jet door opened. A soldier yet scanned the crowd and pointed straight at her. The others turned pale. She walked back alone. No orders, no questions, just silence following her up the stairs. If you believe presence doesn't need permission, type. She was cleared. The unmarked private military jet had touched down precisely at an undisclosed tarmac facility, a VIP extraction operation requiring the highest security clearance levels. Ground personnel immediately began implementing standard procedures for passenger intake operations. Official names were meticulously verified against classified manifests. Security lists were cross-checked multiple times through encrypted databases. She approached the restricted area with deliberate measured steps. No identification credentials displayed. No official name announced to security personnel. One alert young airman stepped forward with professional authority. "Ma'am, this operational area is strictly for authorized pickup personnel only." She acknowledged his instruction with a single respectful nod and stepped aside without argument or protest. Another security officer reinforced the boundary enforcement. No civilian personnel permitted past the designated perimeter markers. "You'll need to remain behind the established safety line." She didn't challenge their authority, didn't attempt to explain her presence or demand special treatment, just walked calmly over to the protective shadow of the aircraft hangar and waited patiently, hands casually positioned in her jacket pockets. Several ground crew members exchanged amused glances. "Probably just another curious tourist," one suggested dismissively. "Maybe trying to catch a ride somewhere like she personally owns the aircraft," another added with obvious mockery. She remained completely motionless despite their commentary. Her composure was remarkable. Someone who appeared entirely comfortable, waiting indefinitely without explanation or justification for her presence. The security personnel continued their routine preparations, occasionally glancing in her direction with mild curiosity, but no real concern. She posed no apparent threat to their operations. Just another civilian who had wandered too close to restricted military activities. They had encountered similar situations countless times. People who approached secure areas out of curiosity or confusion about boundaries. Standard procedure involved polite but firm redirection away from classified operations. Her immediate compliance with their instructions had eliminated any security concerns. She appeared to understand and respect military protocols, even if she lacked proper authorization. The ground crew returned their attention to operational preparations, dismissing her as a resolved minor inconvenience. Then the aircraft door opened with mechanical precision. A decorated officer in full dress uniform stepped out onto the mobile stairs, highly decorated, composed bearings, suggesting significant command experience. He immediately scanned the assembled waiting area with practiced eyes clearly searching for someone specific. "Where is she?" he asked quietly, but with unmistakable authority. The confused airmen looked at each other uncertainly. "Sir, who exactly are we expecting to receive?" He ignored their question completely, looked beyond the organized personnel line with focused intensity, and then his experienced eyes locked directly on her position near the hangar. The recognition was instant and profound. His entire demeanor shifted from searching uncertainty to confident identification. Whatever he had been looking for, he had found it in the woman they had dismissed as an unauthorized civilian. The ground crew began understanding that their assessment of the situation had been fundamentally incorrect. This wasn't a case of civilian curiosity about military operations. This was an official pickup that somehow involved the person they had redirected away from the aircraft. Someone they had treated as an inconvenience was apparently the primary reason for this classified flight operation. The security implications were staggering. If she was authorized for pickup, why wasn't she listed on official manifests? If she required VIP extraction, why had she approached without proper credentials? If she possessed clearance for classified transport, why hadn't she identified herself initially? The answers to these questions would soon reveal that their understanding of military protocols was far more limited than they had assumed, and that some operations transcended the normal procedures they had been trained to follow. She stepped forward with quiet confidence, moving toward the aircraft without waiting for official permission or escort. "That's her," the decorated officer confirmed with obvious relief. "Clear the perimeter and let her through immediately." "Sir, respectfully, she's not listed on any passenger manifest we've received," a confused lieutenant protested while checking his classified documentation. Because she wrote the manifest, the officer replied with finality that ended all discussion. Every person in the immediate area went completely silent. The implications of that statement reverberated through their understanding of the entire operation. She passed calmly by the security cones, the armed guards, the confused junior officers, none of whom dared to interfere with her movement. "Now," one whispered with growing recognition, "is that actually Echo Reed? That's impossible. That operational file was permanently burned. She's not supposed to exist in any official capacity anymore." Another murmured with obvious concern about witnessing something beyond their security clearance. She walked directly to the aircraft stairs without acknowledgement of the attention her presence was generating. The uniformed soldier positioned at the top of the mobile stairs stepped aside respectfully as she approached. She didn't speak to him or offer any verbal commands, just nodded once in professional acknowledgement. "All yours, ma'am," he said with obvious difference that suggested he understood exactly who she was. No other passengers boarded the aircraft despite its apparent capacity for multiple travelers. The military jet had been dispatched specifically for her transportation and her transportation alone. When the aircraft doors sealed with hydraulic precision, no ground personnel knew the flight's ultimate destination. They only understood that she was operational again after an extended period of official inactivity. The aircraft engine spooled to takeoff power as she disappeared into whatever mission awaited her involvement. Her reactivation had occurred without fanfare, without official announcements, without bureaucratic processing. Someone in command authority had simply decided that her capabilities were required again, and the system had responded by providing immediate extraction and transportation to wherever those capabilities were needed. The ground crew watched the aircraft taxi toward the runway with growing comprehension of what they had witnessed. Not a routine VIP transport, but the reactivation of someone whose operational status exceeded their understanding. Someone who operated under protocols that transcended normal military procedures. The manifest she had written wasn't a passenger list. It was authorization for her own extraction. She possessed authority to direct her own transportation without seeking permission from intermediate command levels. The decorated officer who had confirmed her identity wasn't her superior. He was someone whose career had been influenced by her previous operations. Someone who recognized her value and understood the significance of her return to active status. Her civilian appearance had been deliberate operational security rather than lack of proper military credentials. Someone operating at her level would avoid drawing attention through official uniforms or visible rank insignia. Her anonymity was a protective measure rather than a security oversight. The security personnel who had initially redirected her had been performing their duties correctly, but their training hadn't prepared them for encountering someone whose clearance exceeded their ability to verify through normal channels. Her patience with their initial denial had demonstrated professional respect for their role rather than ignorance of proper procedures. She understood that operational security required them to challenge unidentified individuals regardless of their actual authorization. But she also knew that proper identification would come from command authority rather than her own declarations. The entire sequence had been executed with precision that suggested extensive experience with similar extractions. She had maintained operational security while allowing official recognition to occur through appropriate channels. The result was successful extraction without compromising either security protocols or mission parameters. After the unmarked aircraft departed into restricted airspace, controlled chaos erupted among the remaining ground personnel. The passenger manifest, remained completely empty in all official databases. Flight path destinations were listed as classified beyond their access levels. Intelligence Command Headquarters received a single encrypted message through secure channels. Primary Contact reactivated all stations, standby for operational directives. Years earlier, she had served as the sole operative behind a highly classified recovery operation that successfully rescued 2 captured diplomats and systematically dismantled a dangerous rogue element operating within their own intelligence apparatus. The mission had saved lives, prevented international incidents, and eliminated threats that could have compromised national security for decades. She received no public medal ceremony, no official debriefing recognition, no career advancement, just a classified operational designation, Echo Red. Later, political circumstances had changed and someone in command authority had attempted to erase her completely from all official records. But the people who had served with her never forgot her contributions or capabilities. The decorated officer who had greeted her on the tarmac. He had once served under her operational command during a mission that saved his life and the lives of his entire unit. That unmarked military jet had been scrubbed of all identifying insignia and official markings. But the passenger cabin contained only one significant item, a secured case requiring biometric access authentication. Her biometric access. She didn't require additional gear or equipment for whatever mission awaited her. She didn't need detailed operational orders or strategic briefings. She was the contingency plan that commanders activated when conventional approaches had failed. And now someone somewhere in the command structure had made the decision to trigger her return to active operations. The circumstances that required her specific capabilities were serious enough to overcome the political considerations that had previously forced her into unofficial retirement. Her reactivation meant that conventional military resources were insufficient for whatever crisis had developed, that diplomatic solutions had been exhausted, that time was running out for peaceful resolution. Her operational history suggested that she was deployed only when failure was not an acceptable outcome, when the consequences of mission failure exceeded the political risks of acknowledging her existence. The case in the aircraft cabin contained everything she needed to resume operations that officially didn't exist. Equipment that wasn't manufactured by any traceable suppliers, documentation that couldn't be verified through normal intelligence channels, resources that allowed her to operate completely outside standard military or intelligence structures. Her mission parameters weren't limited by rules of engagement that constrained conventional forces. She could pursue objectives using methods that political leadership couldn't officially authorize. Her success or failure would determine whether certain international crises escalated into larger conflicts, whether diplomatic relationships could be preserved or would be permanently damaged, whether lives would be saved or lost based on decisions made in situations that required capabilities no other operative possessed. The biometric case also contained communication equipment that connected her directly to command authority without intermediate supervision. She could coordinate with the highest levels of government while maintaining complete operational autonomy. Her reports would bypass normal intelligence channels and reach decision-makers who understood the true scope of her activities. People who knew that her success even prevented public knowledge of how close civilization came to serious danger. Her anonymity protected not just her own safety, but the political leaders who relied on her capabilities. Plausible deniability that allowed them to pursue necessary actions without accepting public responsibility for methods that couldn't be officially acknowledged. She was the solution to problems that couldn't be solved through official channels. The person who handled situations that required permanent resolution rather than temporary management. The airbase personnel maintained complete official silence about the unprecedented incident they had witnessed. But the following day, a new directive appeared in the standard Tarmac Security Protocol Manual. Do not question personnel authorization if identification bears red clearance designation. No one stationed at the facility understood what the red clearance designation actually meant or represented. But absolutely no one wanted to discover the consequences of challenging that authority incorrectly. The addition to their security protocols suggested that similar situations might occur in the future, that other individuals with comparable authorization might appear without advance notice or standard credentials, that their training needed to accommodate encounters with personnel operating beyond normal military hierarchy. The implications were unsettling for people accustomed to clear chains of command and established procedures. But they understood that some operations required flexibility that standard protocols couldn't provide. Months later, when another unidentified individual approached a different classified aircraft at their facility, a nervous young officer whispered urgently, "Could that be another ECOL operative?" "Negative," someone replied with quiet certainty. "There's only one Echo Reed." "How do you know?" the officer pressed with obvious curiosity. "Because if there were others, we would never hear about any of them." The response ended all speculation about the nature of her operational status. From that point forward, whenever security personnel encountered questions about Echo Red's identity or capabilities, they provided only one standard answer. If you require that information, you already possess the clearance to access it independently. The non-answer became institutional policy for handling inquiries about operations that exceeded normal classification levels. A way of acknowledging that certain information existed while maintaining appropriate security boundaries. New personnel assigned to the facility received briefings about respecting authority they might not understand, about following directives from individuals whose credentials couldn't be verified through standard channels, about maintaining operational security even when they didn't comprehend the full scope of what they were protecting. The lessons learned from her reactivation influenced security training throughout the military aviation system. Recognition that conventional procedures might be inadequate for unconventional situations, that effective security required adaptability rather than rigid adherence to inflexible rules. Her example became an unofficial case study in managing encounters with personnel whose authority transcended normal verification procedures. But her specific identity remained as classified as the operations she conducted. Training materials referenced her operational designation without providing personal details or mission histories. Students learned to recognize authority without understanding its source or limitations. The balance between security awareness and operational necessity that characterized all classified activities. Years later, when military historians attempted to document significant intelligence operations of the era, they encountered systematic gaps in official records. Missions that had clearly occurred but left no verifiable traces in accessible databases. Operations whose results suggested capabilities that officially didn't exist. Her influence on international events remained invisible to academic research in public knowledge. But intelligence professionals understood that certain outcomes had required interventions that exceeded conventional military or diplomatic capabilities. That some crises had been resolved through methods that couldn't be officially acknowledged. That her operational activities had prevented conflicts that would have cost thousands of lives. Her legacy lived not in historical recognition, but in the conflicts that never escalated. The diplomatic relationships that survived when they should have failed. The lives that continued because someone had capabilities that officially didn't exist. If you believe the quietest entries leave the deepest impact, subscribe to The Ordinary Heroes.